Hello, fifth grade. Today we are going to read the first half of Camping with the President, and this is the text we have assigned for this week of distance learning. So, a couple things I want to point out real quick. I know that this particular image does not have the title on it because of the way it's laid out in the book. This is how it's set up in the book, and I just wanted to make sure I kept that order the same. So, really quickly before we get started, we're gonna notice the genre here, which is a narrative nonfiction. So that means this is a true story. And we also want to take a look down here at our essential question, which is how can experiencing nature change the way you think about it? And what the book is asking us to do is read about how President Roosevelt's trip to Yosemite changed his view of the land. So that's going to be one of the things we're going to look for today. Because anytime we are doing any sort of reading, there's always a question we have to ask ourselves. And in this case, the book is nice enough to give that to us. So we're going to move on to our next page here, and that is Camping with the President, and it's by Ginger Wadsworth, and it's illustrated by Karen Dugan. And President Theodore Roosevelt is the main character of this story. And we are going to read through this together just to make sure that we all have a good baseline, and then we'll address some of the stop and check questions that you have on your answer sheet as we go. So, President Theodore Roosevelt mounted his favorite horse and shook the reins. He and Renown shot out of the White House stable door. They galloped straight for the woods on their daily ride. As always, hooves pounded behind them. The president made sure that the Secret Service had to ride hard to keep up with him. America's 26th president loved his busy job, except for one thing. He missed what he called the strenuous life. He wanted to hike alone through the woods, whistling for birds. He longed to chop wood or hunt wild animals. And just in case it wasn't clear, Renown is his horse. Most nights, he set aside time to read. Some of his favorite books were about nature. One evening in the White House, the president finished John Mayer's newest book, Our National Parks. The author's descriptions of California's Yosemite National Park fascinated the president. He tried to picture the 3,000-foot high walls that surrounded Yosemite Valley. Besides all the waterfalls, there are granite boulders bigger than buildings with names like Half Dome and North Dome. Distant mountain peaks soared over 10,000 feet into the sky. Meyer's nature essays clearly indicated a man with strong opinions about land preservation. Roosevelt enjoyed lively discussions. It would be exciting to talk with the country's best known expert on conservation and explore Yosemite. But why couldn't he? He was the president of the entire United States, wasn't he? The president picked up his pen. He wrote so fast that his spectacles danced to the tip of his nose. Dear Mr. Meyer, I am coming west. I want to go camping with you and no one else. In his letter, he explained that he had already decided to take a fact-finding trip in the spring of 1903. Roosevelt had never seen the far west, and he was eager to meet the people and learn about the natural resources, such as minerals, trees, and water. This visit would help the president make better decisions about the region in the future. Roosevelt wrote Meyer that he would visit Yellowstone National Park. After seeing the Grand Canyon and Arizona, he would come to California by train. To wrap up his trip, the president asked Meyer to guide him through the Yosemite area. While camping and avoiding dignitaries, they could talk. The president grinned as he stamped his official seal on the back of the envelope. Camping sounded bully. He especially wanted to see California's giant sequoia trees, the largest living things in the world. 4 whole days in the Yosemite wilderness. The president felt giddy with excitement. Quick thing on bully in this case. Bully is exciting or fun in this case. It's an old usage of the word. We don't really talk like that anymore. But I just wanted to make sure that we understood that word. He would have to get some Western clothes. Months later, the president's special train sped southeast across California from Oakland to the coast to reach the tiny town of Raymond at the end of the railroad line. "I am delighted to meet you," President Theodore Roosevelt said, pumping Meyer's hand up and down. Now, before we continue, we've got a stop and check question. So, our question is, why does the president want to talk to John Meyer? Go back and find the answer. So if we look in the text here, okay, on page 49, there's a couple of things that the president says he wants to be able to do right up here. So he wants to do some things with the region, and he also, on page 48, talks about some of the things that would excite him about talking with John Meyer. Now, I'm not going to give you the answer, but those would be a couple of places to look. I would look for John Meyer. I would look for the president and things the president wants to talk about or do. Those will give you strong clues to find your answer. Now, this page is just a picture. So you can see the president here, John Meyer. Soon, Roosevelt and Meyer were escorted with the rest of the presidential party in stagecoaches some 30 miles up through the foothills of the Sierra Nevada into the Yosemite wilderness. The two men stood in the Mariposa Grove of big trees in front of the grizzly giant, one of the largest giant sequoia trees in the world. On either side of Meyer and Roosevelt, important men, including George Pardee, governor of California, posed for the cameras. Poof! Burning white flash powder blinded them. So this would be the picture here that they were just talking about there in the text. Roosevelt smiled his famous toothy grin for the cameras. Reporters would write about the grizzly giant and the other trees in this grove, but they wouldn't have much else to write about because the president didn't plan on seeing them anytime soon. The president announced that he was prepared to go into the Yosemite with John Meyer. "I want to drop politics absolutely for 4 days." He punched his fist in his hand for emphasis. Everyone roared with disappointment. But there was no arguing with the strong-willed leader of the United States. He waved away the reporters. All the dignitaries climbed into their stagecoaches. 30 cavalrymen mounted their dapple gray horses. They saluted their president. Finally, the president even ordered his Secret Service men to stay away. Spurs jingled and leather creaked. The president watched everyone head down the zigzagging road to the nearest town. And then we turn the page. There we go. The men waited with the pack animals and gear. They were under the watchful eye of Government Ranger Charlie Leidig. Charlie's family ran a hotel in Yosemite Valley where he had lived and worked his entire life. He was the perfect man to be in charge of the day-to-day details of the camping trip. Centuries-old giant sequoia trees surrounded Roosevelt. He reached out to touch the cinnamon-colored bark of the grizzly giant. It felt spongy. Twisted tree limbs reached toward the sky, so heavy they didn't even sway in the afternoon wind. Deep in the forest, a squirrel chattered. Then a bird sang. The president whistled back, hoping to draw out his first Yosemite bird. A robin dropped from a branch and pushed debris about on the forest floor. President Roosevelt pulled out a pocket-sized notebook he always carried. He wrote down Yosemite Wilderness, May 1903, Robin. Then the president sucked in a deep breath of brisk mountain air. "Now, this is bully," he shouted. "Boys, let's build a campfire." When Roosevelt woke up the next morning, he recognized wonderful music of a hermit thrush, one of his favorite birds. The president was starving. He wrestled the fry pan from Charlie. Before long, bacon-scented smoke drifted into the forest. Then the president scrambled 6 eggs beside the slab of bacon. He ate a huge breakfast, happy to be away from the White House cooks who fussed over his diet. After nibbling on a crust of bread, John Meyer picked up a sequoia cone. He shook it. Tiny dark seeds, much smaller than snowflakes, spilled out. Meyer explained that from just one seed, the grizzly giant had sprouted about 2,000 years earlier. Other trees in the grove were almost as old. Many were hundreds of years old. Sequoias, Meyer added, grew on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada, but nowhere else in the entire world. Roosevelt's eyes widened with surprise. This is where we are going to stop reading today, but we're going to take a look at um, our question down here, right? Our question is, why is the president surprised? Find details in the text to support your answer. We can find the answer to that right here on this page. And we know that the last line we just read is Roosevelt's eyes widened with surprise. Something is shocking or amazing or surprising to the president. We know this. So we should probably look in the paragraph right above it. And remember that you have to explain what you have to turn the question around and basically explain what the question is asking you, right? So before you go and find any of your evidence, the first thing you should write down on that paper is President Roosevelt is surprised because, and then you can find your evidence and explain why he is surprised. Remember, anytime you're answering a question, TTQA, turn that question around. All right, and that's where we're going to stop for today. Tomorrow, we will finish reading the story together, and then we will look at the last of our stop and check questions, and we will then answer our or get closer to answering our author's purpose question. That's all I have for you today. Have a good afternoon, explorers.